Hello everyone, welcome to this new memoQ webinar. I am Damien from memoQ's marketing team and I will be the host of this webinar. Today's presenter is Gary Vender, Solution Architect at memoQ. In this session, we will take you through the whole process of using memoQ for translation and review with Trados Studio files. This presentation will last approximately 30 minutes and there will be 10 more questions at the end. So if you have questions during this session, you can write them down in the question and answers panel. The webinar is being recorded and you will be able to find it on our website and on our YouTube channel in a few days. Now it's time for me to let Gary start this session. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. I will jump right into this when I manage to share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay. I hope everything is all right. So, Gergely Bandor here, and I'm going to talk about translating Trados files with memoQ. First, I'd like to give you a general introduction to the topic. Basically, talk about what you can and what you cannot do in memoQ. There are a few things that are somewhat limited. First of all, what memoQ gives you is the ability to participate in translation projects that were prepared for Trados users by a project manager who or a translation agency or client that is a Trados user rather than memoQ user. What we promise you is that you will be able to receive files for translation and deliver them to your client as they expect them. This is something that is not new at all in memoQ. So we've been providing Trados-related features in memoQ for maybe 10 years. So this is a real time-tested solution. And from the start, memoQ has been arguably on the forefront of translation tool compatibility. One thing that is common in addition or besides actual translation is receiving a translation memory from a Trados-based company or project manager. And this can happen as part of your translation package that you receive. I will talk about packages a bit more. Or it can happen in the form of a so-called translation memory exchange or TMX file. One thing about the extent of compatibility with Trados, we've been adding features to make the Trados more and more complete over the years. It's probably arguably also complex now, but the general goal is making it complete and not complex. And there are basic things that probably everybody expects working, like segment statuses, match rates, which are the numbers next to each segment showing what kind of translation memory match was used to be translated, and comments added to either documents or segments. So these are all working as expected. You will be able to use these features as if in a Trados-based package or document as if you were a Trados user. I mean, you get the same functionality and you can deliver the same types of things as a Trados user regarding these features. And there are, in the last few years, we've been adding more and more, let's say, specialized or advanced features like supporting the tracked changes functionality of Trados, which means if you are, for example, a reviewer or a translator who works with a Trados-based reviewer, you will be able to see what kind of changes they made. or you will be able to add track changes in memoQ, and your translator or reviewer on the other side will be able to see them. And also the so-called linguistic quality assurance or translation quality assurance related features, which are about, again, a reviewer marking errors in your document. Okay. I'm going to talk a bit more, and later on I will be showing you things in action. I think if we talk about the compatibility of memoQ with Trados, or maybe the compatibility of translation tools in general, we can talk about three bigger topics. One topic is at the heart of translation, bilingual documents themselves. When you receive a document for translation in Trados-based workflow, it is most probably a bilingual document that was already prepared for translation in Trados by a Trados-based project manager or a colleague of yours who is using Trados. And the bilingual document is a special file that contains, well, the most important things it contains is obviously the translation, both in source and target languages. Obviously, the target side might be empty, but this is the bilingual documents are a special format that can hold both source and target text in a segmented way, so a list of segments. And these segments in a translation workflow might hold important status information, saying whether or not each segment has been translated, marked as edited but not final, or signed off, and so on. And obviously, the match rates, if the workflow began with retranslating a document from translation memory, next to each segment you will see a match rate number. And these things, again, are working just like in Trados Studio, obviously with a different user interface, but you get the same information. And for all the features that memoQ supports, what memoQ gives you is the ability to receive such a document, translate it, and deliver it in the format expected by your client or project manager. There are some things that you cannot do. One thing that you cannot do in the Trados-based or Trados bilingual document is exporting the final format. So you cannot do this without the studio. And another thing that you don't get is a translation preview. And if I haven't said it, the Trados bilingual document format, the Trados Studio bilingual document format is called SDLXlib. So these are files with the SDLXlib file extension. And those of you who are old enough to remember, there are older, long discontinued Trados products as well. Before Trados Studio, we had the so-called Trados tag editor, and an even older version of Trados that plugged into Microsoft Word. The file formats of these ancient pieces of software are also supported in memoQ, and surprisingly, they never really seem to completely die off. So even in the last few days, when some of you were responding to our webinars and emails, you still sent us some questions about the old tag editor format called PTX. So this is bilingual documents. You can receive them, import them, translate them, and deliver them, and you will be in most cases you will be equal to other participants in such a project who are based on Trados Studio. But I think nowadays it's probably more common to receive documents as part of a translation package rather than individually. And translation packages are technically they are really just a package file. They are very, very similar technically, or technically they are actually zip files, so complex archive files. In the case of Trados Studio, they have this SDL PPX extension for the format that you will receive for translation, and there is a return package which contains translated files, and it has the SDL RPX file extension. The packages contain the bilingual documents I talked about. So these SDLXlib files, this is the most important type of content in the package, the things that you actually have to translate. But you will very often also receive translation resources in the package. So translation memories or terminology content. memoQ also supports this type of content. So you will, for each translation memory and each terminology database in your SDL PPX package, memoQ can create a translation memory or term based on import in memoQ. And another thing that they might contain are reference files. Probably the most common form of reference file is a PDF. That for desktop publishing type of translation projects or anything that can be printed into a PDF, you often receive a PDF to give you a nice view of the document you are translating. And again, memoQ gives you an easy workflow to receive these files for translation, import them into your memoQ, translate them, and deliver them in the final format expected by your client or project manager. And I've already talked about resources, which are the third major group of things that are related to translation to compatibility. I'm talking about them separately because in some cases, even though your project manager can put them into a package, it might happen that you receive, for example, a terminology list as an Excel file rather than part of the package. Or in some cases, you might receive an additional translation memory in the PMX format rather than, again, part of the package. I will talk about how you can import them into memoQ. Just a few tips and tricks before I actually start showing you these features in action. Even though memoQ user interface gives you the possibility to take an existing project and import translation document into it, or click a button to import a new package and create a project from it, and so on. You actually don't even need to open your copy of memoQ to start working. You can do these things in Windows Explorer. And in some cases, when you do not have Trados Studio on your computer, the Trados file formats are probably even associated with memoQ already, so you can just double-click the files and they can get a few additional buttons before you can start working. Or if you also have Trados, you need to right-click on the file and choose the translate memoQ command. I will show all of this in action. There is a tricky thing that there are two export commands in memoQ. One is called export stored path and the other called export dialog. What you need to remember is that if you want to create the return package, you will need to use export stored path. If there is a special case when you want to, for example, return a partial delivery to your project manager, you might want to choose the export dialog command to be able to export an individual translation document, even though you started with the package and not an individual document in the beginning. But I will show all of this. And there is another interesting trick. Still in Windows Explorer, you can right-click a document and there you will find the memoQ tab in the Properties window of each file. And for the file format supported by memoQ, you will see additional information about the file there. Okay, so I think I will proceed with a demonstration of the translation process itself. Okay, I have a lot of files here in this folder. I'm not going to use all of these, but only some of them. So here are a couple of files. The one that I've selected right now is an SDLPPX file. This is a Trados package. It seems that on my machine, it is apparently not associated with memoQ at the moment. And there is the other file, which is an SDLXLIF file, which is a Trados Studio document file. And as I said, I can right-click and go to Properties and the memoQ tab to see information. So I can see that this is a German to US English translation. I see a breakdown of, I see information about the number of segments in it, and even the progress if in a special case I start with a translation document that is not all empty in the beginning. And I'm not sure, maybe there are similar files, similar information from package. No, for package, SDLPPX packages, you do not get such information. Which to start with first? I think I will start with the document. So my memoQ is already open, but I'm not doing any translation work. So I can just double-click the file. Oh, okay. This is a machine where memoQ is not associated with the file format. So instead I've right-clicked the file and chose translate with memoQ in the context menu, and memoQ pops up. It gives you, in the case of SDLXLIF translation document files, it gives you this create new project from template window. I'm not going to talk about templates in this webinar. This is a completely different and quite big topic. But what you can see is that we have a window that is pre-filled with a project name that is derived from the name of the document I'm translating. memoQ also reads source and target languages from the file. So basically, all I have to do is just click finish here to get a project for translation. And I'm clicking close in the progress window, and here I have a rather empty translation project with just the single translation document I've been opening. And again, I can talk about very briefly the expected things. Somehow this was a file that was probably already translated in Trados before importing into memoQ, or basically not really translated, but somebody copied source to target and confirmed the segment. So we see for segments with a confirmed state, and there is match rate information next to each segment, and so on. And again, there are many features that you are able to use here. You can, besides doing translation work, you can leave comments, you can use track changes, and many many more advanced translation features. And when you are finished, you can go back to your document list in the project and choose either export dialog or the export stored path to get a file that you can deliver to your client. Okay. And I can show you that after exporting, if I'm sorting by modified date, I see a new file in the original folder marked with the language code of the target language that I can use to deliver to the client. So this is the case of a translation package. Oh no, this was a translation document, sorry, an SDLXLIF extension. And the other case is the translation package. So here is an SDL-PPX file. Again, I can right-click and choose translate in memoQ, but if you see a memoQ icon next to the file here, that means that the file is associated with memoQ and you can just double click it. In my case, I need to right click and choose translate in memoQ. memoQ prompts me to close the current project and create a new one. In the case of packages, memoQ is not using a template, but again gives you a window that is filled with information from the project, from the package file. This was a special case because this was a package that contained more than one target language, and in the case of a local project, I can only create a memoQ project with one target language at a time. So I can choose either German or Hungarian. Myself in English, I'm choosing Hungarian this time, and basically I just need to click next. I don't know how many of you come from translation agencies or translation teams that also have a server. You can click this button in the lower left corner to create a project on your server instead of a local one. But I'm not going to talk about online project this time. In the second window, before clicking finish, I have a choice to skip importing translation memories and turn bases if I want to, or I can go into the options of the SDLXLIF filter. I think I do not have time to go into details like this, so I'm going to skip that and just click finish. And what happened here is that memoQ created a memoQ project out of the translation document contained in the package. It also created a new translation memory from the one that was in the package. And probably I also had a turn base. Yeah, I also had a turn base in this package. So these things are all set up. There might actually be some advanced settings in the package, like a penalty for translation memory, things like that. So there are settings in the background that are also imported when a project is created from the package. Okay, this is again test content in this package, so nothing spectacular. we see different segment statuses. So two of these segments are technically translated, even though, again, this is just a test file without actual content to translate. The middle one is in edited state. One more word about states. Both memoQ and Trados Studio has a rather complex system of statuses for segments, and you have a choice to customize how memoQ maps different states between the tools, because they don't even have the exact same set of states. I think Trados has a quite large number of different segment statuses, and memoQ is a bit simpler in this regard. And again, you can just translate these documents and packages as any other memoQ packages. You can see that you get translation memory hits in the translation results. These are coming from the translation memory that you received the package itself. And even terminology hits with blue that comes from the terminology list or terminology database that you received as part of the package. And the orange hits here are kind of irrelevant for us. They come from machine translation that is set on my end. Okay, and the trick I've already talked about, but I want to also show it to you so you can. So this is a package that contained an SDLXLIF document file for translation. And if I choose export dialog here, then I can export just the document from the package, or I can choose export stored path to create a delivery package for my client, and I can go back to the original folder and hopefully show you that I've created a delivery package with this last click. Okay, and there are a few additional things I wanted to talk about. I still have a few minutes. I've talked about translation memories, and I've showed you that you can receive them as part of the package, but in some other cases you might receive a TMX file. And you can export, I mean, you can import these TMX files manually into an existing translation memory in your copy of memoQ. What you need to understand if you exchange translation memory data between any two translation tools, that some leverage is often lost in these conversions, which is absolutely normal. Actually, smart translation technicians or engineers can minimize this type of leverage loss by processing these files manually. And also, memoQ itself contains some smart import logic to minimize this leverage loss. And in addition to receiving terminology as part of the package, you might also receive additional terminology. It's an Excel file. This is something that I also want to show you. So basically, I have a special Excel file here. Well, very, very simple one. Hopefully, okay. This is not the one. This is the one I wanted to show you. Give me a second. So this Excel file called terminology is the one that I prepared. So basically, I think it's quite typical to receive an Excel file which contains a first row with names of languages and additional rows. In my case, only one row of terms in various languages. When there are synonyms, so more than one translation for language, you might even have several columns. In my case, I have two German columns for two versions of the German term. And if you have such a file, it's pretty easy to import that into a term base. In my case, I will just import it into this one, although it has pretty different languages. So I'm right-clicked my term base in the project and chose import terminology, and then double-click the Excel file. And memoQ brings up this term base Excel import settings window. And you can see here that the first row was actually automatically identified as a header row by memoQ, and it also identified the languages automatically. So because I had the language names in English in the first row, I don't need to worry about telling memoQ which column contains what. It just read the language names for the columns and it's ready to import. So basically I don't have to do anything here. It's such a simple file, then clicking OK. One special thing happened here. Because this term base doesn't contain all the languages that were in the Excel file, I can let memoQ expand my term base with the languages from the imported file, and that's it. And if I edit the file now, edit the term base now, I mean, I will see all the various terms that were either there originally or were imported from the Excel file. Okay, I went maybe 1 minute over time, but I think I didn't skip anything, so I will now look at the questions that you prepared or sent. Give me a second, where are they? Meeting controls. Okay, so on the Q&A tab. First question. Okay, somebody was asking, yes, how long this webinar will take. I think Damien answered this in the beginning. It was expected to take 30 minutes, it took 31 minutes instead, and I have at most 15 minutes for questions, but maybe I don't need to take that much. Next question. It would be great if you covered online Trados DMs and term bases as well, and if there's a way to access them via memoQ. At this moment, this is something that you cannot do, as far as I know. We would be very glad to give our users access to online Trados translation memories and term bases, but this would require SDL's willingness and cooperation as well. Okay, somebody is suggesting that we should change the bilingual export format. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand this question. If I read it up, and maybe I will understand why I'm reading it. So please change bilingual export format offering quote, Trados unquote, old format. Very confusing for more basic users. Okay, so I think the suggestion is that when you are exporting a bilingual document from memoQ for the ancient Trados bilingual Word document format, which I didn't even talk about today, then we should probably change the naming, which is confusing for users. Okay, but thank you for the suggestion, and we will forward it to the product team. Next question or suggestion. Sometimes we experienced that memoQ introduced some memoQ specific text into the SDLXLib files we translated with memoQ, which Studio was unable to handle well. Have you encountered such a problem? Do you have a solution for this? This is something that should not happen in general. I think if anything like this happens, then our support team must be very responsive, because we take these kinds of issues and user problems very seriously. Next one. Sometimes when I got SDLXLib files from an agency, the file was right, filled where it should be filled, but TM and TB were empty, although they wanted to send full ones. While opened in Trados, everything worked. How to avoid such a problem? This, again, sounds like a technical issue, and something that should be solved through our support. Next one, if I have both Trados and memoQ licenses, why would I use memoQ for an agency that provides SDL XLib files or an SDL PPX package? For me, I have empty with memoQ, also LiveDocs, and also use a TB and its features. What are some other advantages? So basically, the question is, what are the reasons to use Trados as a substitute of, memoQ as a substitute of Trados, and you have access to both? Performance might be one thing. So basically, memoQ is a 64-bit capable application. So with a large project that requires a lot of memory, memoQ probably gives you better performance. I think it also might come down to the individual user. So if you are a super experienced Trados Studio user and you are very efficient with the Trados specific features, then that might not be efficient for you to choose memoQ. But if you are primarily a memoQ user, then you are most probably more efficient at squeezing all the efficiency gains out of memoQ itself. So long story short, I think it's also a personal preference. One thing that is relevant to teams and translation companies is that you can very easily create a collaborative team project out of these packages with just a few clicks, and then the translation memory quickly becomes online. So you have very easy access to collaboration features that might not be that obvious on the other side. And yeah, you mentioned LiveDocs and the easy to use term basis compared to Trados. I think maybe I could mention the Muse feature, which gives you AI-like predictive typing features in memoQ. And really, there is a long list of features that are about making translators more efficient. But it really also depends on personal preference and personal experience. Okay, next one. Okay, somebody is saying that I also find that text from an SDL PPX package can be a problem in memoQ. Very sensitive. I don't know what you mean by sensitive here. I need to filter for one starting with 0, 2, and so on. Honestly, I don't, from this much information, I don't really see what this is exactly about. But in case of any issue, our support team should be very responsive. Next question or insight is, I mostly need to deliver exported final files, so I'm a bit disappointed. So this refers to the fact that you cannot export final files from memoQ if the original file format was a Trados bilingual document or package. Anyway, from time to time, some clients want just the return package. From what you said, I would think I can simply generate a return package from memoQ. Yes, this is correct. So you can always create a return package. But no, says the user, I have to import this return package to Trados, and then I need to create a new return package. Okay, I'm not sure what you're referring to here. To me, this sounds like some sort of misunderstanding. Okay, next one. If you add your, again, in any case, with technical issues, I suggest that should be always confident in relying on our support team. Okay. Next question, if you add your own translation memory on term-based to a package, does it get exported with it, or do you have to remove it before exporting the package? You do not need to remove any of this, so the delivery package always contains translations only, and definitely nothing that you manually add it to your project. You don't need to worry about it. Next one, how can I include term-based in the Trados delivery package, preferably in the multi-term format? You cannot do this at the moment. I wonder if you can do this in Trados Studio, but this is something that we haven't developed in memoQ, at least not yet. Next one. Does memoQ term-based support forbidden words and non-translatables from Trados? Is there the risk to see a forbidden word as a glossary term? This is an interesting thing because while memoQ itself has a general feature for forbidden terms, so you can go into a term base and click a term, select it, and mark it as forbidden. As far as I know, there is no such standard feature in multi-term, or last time I looked, they didn't have this feature. So this is not on, but a multi-term term base might have, different multi-term term bases might have different base mark terms as forbidden. So this is something that is not possible as far as I know because of no standard functionality on the side. I might be wrong about this one, but the last time I checked, and this might have been several years ago, this feature was actually missing on the Trados side. That's why we didn't develop it. If it has been added since then it is quite likely that it will show up as a new feature in memoQ. Okay. I have at most 3 minutes left, and questions keep coming in, so I might not be able to answer all of them right here in this webinar, but we will try to get back to all of you in email if you didn't receive a reply. I still have question. Still have time for maybe 2 or 3 of them. Next one, will there ever be a possibility of exporting to the original file format? What is the best way of getting around this at present? This is unfortunately pretty much next to impossible due to technical limitations. So file format import and export is really a complex thing, and it would require an extreme effort on our side, if at all logically possible, to recreate Trados-based file imports and exports on our side. It is unfortunately pretty much likely that exporting to the original file format is something that you will not see in the foreseeable future. Next one, if you join segments in memoQ, does the file convert to SDL properly and then to its original file format without problems? Yes, so this must work in all cases. Joining and splitting must work as expected. Okay, somebody is again asking about exporting to the final format. Still impossible, just like half a minute ago. Okay, next one is a remark rather than a question. A good reason to use memoQ instead of Studio is when you have to protect text using the regex tagger feature. It is easier to do in Studio than in Studio by a long shot. So thank you for the remark and helping out somebody else the reply. Okay. That's an interesting question. Can the return package, or I always said delivery package, but same thing. So can the return package from memoQ be opened by another person or Trados user, or can it only be opened by the person who creates the package? Honestly, I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know from the top of my head whether or not this is possible to use Trados to open a delivery package if the original is not created there. But at any rate, there is one thing that I didn't talk about, or not too much, that these files are actually just archive files. So you can take this file, rename it to zip, and you can go inside the file. Oh, this is in my case associated with this total commander thing. But again, you can peek inside the content of the archive, and there you will be able to go into the folder that is named after the language code of the target file, and at least you can pick up the translated SDLXLIF bilingual document file from it. Where is my, okay, and basically again, I'm just 1 minute over time, so any question I haven't answered must wait for an email answer. Sorry about that, but time is finite, and it seems that you are very eager to ask more and more questions as I'm talking. So once again, thank you for participating today. Hope you learned something useful, and do have a nice rest of the day. Thank you again, and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.